Welcome to MBA 543, St. Francis University. My name is Adam Conrad, your instructor, and this is Chapter 15, Servicing the Sale and Building the Partnership. So we're going to talk about building long-term partnership with customer service. We're going to describe current developments in customer service, describe the major customer service methods that strengthen the partnership, and how to add value with expansion selling, and how to deal effectively with complaints. So we've been talking for the last number of chapters about the 6-step presentation plan. This time we're going to be focusing on step 6, which is servicing the sale. So we've been down through approach, need discovery, presentation, negotiation, close, and now we're talking servicing the sale. So servicing the sale is essentially, the thing that a company can develop quite a reputation for service. And there's a lot of brands, there's a lot of companies that do a lot of business because they've really done a lot with service. I can think Zappos, for example, is a great example. You've probably heard plenty of examples of Zappos as a customer service-oriented company. And just the fact that they're selling shoes online and have such an outstanding reputation for service, they were able to sell that company for, hundreds of millions of dollars. So think about this. Your customers that are satisfied they're basically an auxiliary sales force. They're people who recommend your products to others. So they're a group of people who recommend customer-driven organizations to others. If they're pleased with service that they receive after the sale, they'll certainly tell other people. And I know you hear all kinds of stories about how one person that has a bad experience will tell a dozen people or whatever. But research shows when somebody has a good customer service experience, that they'll tell an average of 6 people. So when somebody has an outstanding experience, they'll make an effort to tell twice that many people, and maybe more. One thing that you have to keep in mind in today's fast-paced world and the fact that everybody's got an internet-connected device with them at all times now is that when it comes to customer service and ratings and reviews and those types of things, if you think simply about your choice of a restaurant when you're in a town, when you're visiting a different town, how many times have you looked up ratings through Yelp or some other Google or something, some other rating system, or even booked a table that way through something like OpenTable? So if you see really, really bad review after really, really bad review repeatedly for a restaurant, I think it absolutely has an effect on whether you choose it or not. Same goes for really positive responses. When you look and you see, I actually just booked a reservation for a place, and I'd eaten there before years ago, and I'm going back to a town I haven't visited for a while, and I looked at the reviews, and they were just incredible. And actually I like when I see reviews that look like 4.5 stars. If I see 5 stars for every review, I'm a bit doubtful of that. It's really better to see a mix. You can't please everybody all the time, so I think it's always better to see that. In real estate, we see the same thing. Real estate agents get reviewed now, and if you have all 5 stars all the time, I don't know that gives you as much information as if you see 4.5 stars or 4 stars, because you really want to see the challenges that people face in deals and how a salesperson overcomes them. So, achieving successive sales after the fact. So a successful partnering effort results in additional sales and referrals, and that's key, because you really want not only keep that core business, but to get more business on the back of that core business. Repeat sales come after one demonstrates the ability to add value in different ways. So let's face it, people in real estate is a good example. You get a good real estate agent that's very successful in selling homes, word spreads. And other people say, hey, if I want to get my home sold, I know I got to go to them because they're the person that gets the job done. If you take the customer's point of view and act in the customer's interest, it's often described as customer advocacy. And it is a major factor in underlying repeat business. So one of the things about being in business is that while you still have to represent the company, the client who feels like you're really on their side, that really feels like you've done a great job for them and helped them through the process, is absolutely going to refer you to additional business. So what about the post-sale expectations of clients and responding to those? It's a good strategy to have a process for this. So the importance relates to the fact that people are not really buying the thing, they're buying what the thing does or the value that it brings, right? And so again, that's getting back to that feature advantage benefit selling. So if you think about benefit selling, people buy the benefit, they don't really buy the thing. I know that they get rung up for the thing or they purchase the thing, but it is the benefits that they're trying to achieve from it. And so it's important after the fact that they continue to receive the benefits. I'll give you a good example. If you sell somebody a new furnace for their home, not a lot of people are terribly wild about buying a new furnace. It's not really like, whoopee, I get to go buy a new furnace. I mean, maybe they go, whoopee, I get to go buy a big screen TV, but nobody's going to get excited about buying a furnace. So they're really buying the benefits of the furnace, right? They're really not excited about buying the furnace itself. They want to make sure their house stays cool in summer and warm in the winter. So following up with them to make sure it's doing what they had hoped it to do is key. So a good example, you sell somebody a furnace and you hook it up and one room out of the house is not as warm as the others in the wintertime. And so bedroom's 10 degrees colder than the others. That's going to affect their satisfaction. So following up after the sale, I mean, the furnace may be working perfectly, it was installed correctly, but one of the rooms is not getting as warm as the others, again, you would discover that on a follow-up call rather than wait for the client to call and tell you. So it's really important to follow up on those expectations to make sure that people got what they had hoped. How do you respond to a customer who has increased expectations? Clients these days have a lot of expectations. They expect you to know in advance. They expect, I give you a personal example. I get propane delivered to my house. And I woke up one morning and my water heater is fired by propane. And I woke up one morning, I had no hot water. And so I called the provider and said, I don't have any hot water, my propane tank is empty. And they said, well, let me look at our records. We switched over to a different system and we didn't realize that you would run out so quickly. Our projection showed you should still have 30 or 40% in your tank. But it's a new system and it's still learning. I said, well, maybe a good idea would be to check with your clients and tell them, hey, we switched systems 6 months ago, and you may want to just double check your propane to make sure that it is where we think it is. We think it's at 30%. Could you just text us back and tell us what you find so that we make sure you don't run out? That's the expectation of clients today. It's not acceptable that you just let me run out of propane. Clients aren't going to go out and check their propane tank every day. That's not something we think about. But it is something that you need to think about as a service provider, particularly when you switch systems, is to think about what's going to happen to our clients. I can imagine that I couldn't have been the only person who ran out of propane if this is the case. It seems unusual or unlikely to me. So the customer has increased expectations for how things work today. It's simple. You could have sent me a text. You could have sent me an email to let me know, hey, just a heads up, we switched systems. We really need you to double check because we just want to make sure you don't run out. So how you respond to that. Now, how they responded is, they were, of course, surprised I ran out, but within an hour, they had somebody out filling up my tank. Okay, so now they've resolved the problem and we're moving on. But if they weren't able to get me propane that day, maybe wait till the next day or whatever, I would have probably been upset enough to switch providers. And I think that's what you have to keep in mind today is that customers can go to alternatives, and they will. So keeping the customer happy is a winning strategy because there is customer attrition. Customers leave. So keep in mind that regaining a customer, a lost customer, can be 4 to 5 times more expensive than keeping a current customer satisfied. So there's lots of reasons why customers leave. Poor service, product dissatisfaction, price can be an issue. But keep in mind their switching costs. So price isn't always it. They may say it's price, but that may be just because they ran out of propane one day. But keeping your customers is really valuable because gaining customers or a customer acquisition is expensive. And so customers who leave, may leave over product dissatisfaction a couple percent, but just poor service is really the biggest issue, or their perception of poor service. That's the other thing. It doesn't matter what you think it is, it matters what the customers think it is. So one of the things you want to do is consider your own experiences with product and service providers. When you change providers, probably a good example here is cell phones. What caused you to move from one to the other? Was it the product failure? Was it price? Was it the network? Was it signal coverage? Was it their billing? And what could they have done to retain the business? One thing you see a lot of times, like in cellular carriers or in cable companies, is that they'll actually give incentives for people to switch. So people switch and move around because they want to take advantage of incentives. And companies, I actually was seeing commercials for cable companies actually offering to pay out the early termination fees of other cable companies. I think the cellular providers are doing that too. So, they're looking to figure out ways to get customers to switch and then try to keep you once they've switched. So let's talk about some business-to-business service behaviors. So some important service behaviors when you're selling business to business is diligence, information communication, inducements, empathy, and sportsmanship. We got a picture here of Bill Gates, who actually well known for Microsoft, but also he wrote a book called Business at the Speed of Thought, predicted that in the new economy, customer service may become the primary value-added function. Salespeople are in a unique position to enhance customer satisfaction and trust, the two major contributors to relationship quality. So with adequate orientation and training, members of the sales force can build long-term, profitable customer relationships. Research indicates that the building process involves 5 important service behaviors that we see here for business to business. So let's talk about diligence, which combines the 2 types of service behaviors, responsiveness and reliability. Information communication, which is regularly relaying product information to the customer in a clear and concise manner. Inducements are also aimed at personalizing the relationship with the customer. Just talked a little bit about those with cellular carriers. Empathy is one of those high-touch abilities that mark the fault line between salespeople who are highly productive and those who are average or below average. So salespeople who display a strong willingness to help customers and make an effort to understand them are demonstrating empathetic behavior. And that might be as simple as you making a flight, at the last minute to deliver a part for the client just because you want to make sure that they're serviced properly, whatever it is. I mean, there's plenty of examples you can use out there for empathy. Sportsmanship is simply a salesperson's willingness to tolerate setbacks and disappointments without displaying negativism. It means demonstrating good social judgment and professionalism during all customer interactions. This particular one is my example from last chapter when we talked about the fact that if you lose, you got to go win it back. And the reality is that's not very sportsmanlike. The reality is take your loss gracefully. Be generous with the client, help them out, send them articles in the future. Their choice may not work out. They may wind up not having a good relationship with their new vendor. It may not be a good experience. And if you behave poorly when you lost, they're not coming back to you. Particularly if you lose a customer, behaving poorly is not a good strategy because you're going to lose a lot of downline business as a result. So again, getting into servicing the sale. So we talked about all these other pieces here. We've completed the completed consultative sales presentation guide in 15.2 illustrates the ways in which high-performance salespeople use value-added strategies to service the sale and build repeat business and referrals. Customer service. Servicing the sale provides many opportunities to strengthen their partnership. Following through on promises, following up, and expansion selling are key ingredients to that customer service program. So how about some key customer moments? So Tony Alessandra, a well-known sales trainer and consultant, says there are 3 possible outcomes when a customer does business with an organization. Refers to the moment of truth, which happens when the customer's expectations were met. Nothing happened to disappoint the customer, and the salesperson did not do anything to surpass the customer's expectations. The moment of truth usually does not build customer loyalty. The moment of misery is the outcome of a selling situation in which the customer's expectations were not met. The customer may feel a sense of disappointment or even anger. Many customers who experience the moment of misery may share their feelings with others and often make a decision to fire the salesperson. The moment of magic is the outcome of a sale in which the customer received more than they expected. the salesperson surpassed the customer's expectations by going the extra mile and providing a level of service that added value to the customer-salesperson relationship. So let me give you an example of the moment of magic. Years ago, I owned a couple of car stereo and truck accessory stores, retail stores. And so one of the things we did a lot of business with is we would install remote control car starters, which is very popular in the Northeast, very popular in cold areas, but very unique and new to the market because cars had just become fuel injected and you could install systems that would allow them to start remotely. Now, a lot of this would seem passé and manufacturers of cars actually include this as an option. But back in the day, this was a radically different thing that most people were not accustomed to. One of the things I did is, particularly in the time of year when we're installing these, is usually the weather's bad outside. Cars would come into our shop and they would be dirty, very dirty from being outside in the bad weather. So one of the things we did is we'd install a remote control car starter and then we would send it over to a wash bay to have the car washed and detailed before, just a minor detail, not a big deal, but a washed up, clean car going out the door. And the customers would come to pick up their car and they'd be shocked and amazed that we washed their car. That was just a value add. I mean, they were coming for a remote control car starter. They expected it to work. That was the minimum amount of service. But the moment of magic was when we did that little extra that they didn't expect. And so that's just a great example of how you can exceed the customer's expectations and provide them with something above and beyond what they were thinking. So I think that proves as a good example. Some posts, and by the way, will they tell their friends? We were kind of early to the market in doing this before others were doing it, but we eventually had competitors. So think about who got the repeat business, the people that exceeded the client expectations or people that just did the job. I think you get an idea about how that works. Post-sale services that ensure success of sales. You can do a lot of things that, you can help clients through the process, maybe make credit arrangements for them to be able to afford more, schedule deliveries for them to make sure that they get the product on time, or just help them. Be present when they receive the product or service. That's wonderful. If you can be there and see how it's working for them. Monitor the installation or the implementation of the software or the item. Big expensive goods like an MRI machine would be a good example of that. Offer training on using and caring for the product. One of the biggest reasons why people switch complex things like software, is because of lack of training. So if you can offer training on an ongoing basis or build that into your product, it is golden, because people will actually switch because they don't know how to use it, or their staff switches and they don't know how to use it. Provide price change information, or updates, industry updates. There's all kinds of things that you can do to ensure that you're the prime resource and that you're the person to go to. The goal is to create the lifetime customer. So Tom Peters is an advocate for creating these lifetime customers, and that is the well-served customer who becomes most significant sustainer of the business is the lifetime customer. So if you can get people to buy from you over their lifetime, if you can get people to, if they leave their organization, when they go to their new organization, say, hey, you know what, we're using this software, but we're going to switch because this is the best thing for our organization, and they bring you with them, I mean, you get the point. You've hung the moon at that point. Customer follow-up adds value. So customer follow-up has two main advantages. It allows you to express appreciation for the purchase, and it determines if the customer is satisfied with the purchase. I would make, when I was a territory sales rep and I sold software, I would spend a lot of time on the road, not only visiting people to sell software to new clients, but I would make it a point to visit my existing clients, pop in, take them to lunch. And it was incredible how strong of a relationship I had with my clients as a result. And when anything happened, I refer to this as territory management. One of the things I did extremely well is what I like to say is if a pin dropped in one of the states that was my territory, I heard it, because my clients were jacked into and tuned into the business and knew, if an executive director of one business was moving and going to a different part of the state, they knew where she was going, and I would be able to call on that person and have an introduction. Same thing was true for my own clients. If I had a client move to a new location, they'd bring me with them. So it was just really key in terms of relationship management, and it built so much follow-on business. It was just incredible. If you have poor service and you lack follow-up after the sale, they get that right away. If you got the sale and they never hear from you again, very different relationship you're going to have with your client than if you do the types of things that I've described. So let's talk about some follow-up methods. I mean, these are pretty straightforward. You can make a personal visit. These are the 5 different types of things. Follow-up visit, a telephone call, email, letter or card, a call report. You can give them all kinds of different things that you can follow up with, the articles. You can have a newsletter. Real estate salespeople try to do this quite a bit, but a lot of them drop the ball and don't do much with it. So things like emails are practically free to send. So, I mean, I don't know why more people don't do it, but you'll find that they just don't. Personal visits are key, particularly in high-end sales. You gotta go out and meet with your client. I made a point. I would travel. If I went to Milwaukee, I'd go visit all my clients. I'd take one to lunch, one to breakfast, one to dinner. Go do a presentation. I mean, I made it a point to make as many touches and contacts as possible, because clients really appreciate that, and it gives you a chance to get an update on their business. You could do upselling. Hey, do you have this other product that we offer? More licenses, whatever it was. I mean, it's just a great opportunity to talk with them about their business. And again, I jumped ahead to a little bit of cross-selling and upselling. So, in my situation with selling software, my goal was to really upgrade their sale to other product lines that we offered. I might add just some licenses, but as I learned more about the customer, I would look for ways to expand the selling, more products to them. Of course, the main product that we're selling to the client is the full line selling. But once you've already sold the main product to them, then maybe you look at add-on products, or look for ancillary businesses that you might be able to help. So there's just really a lot of opportunity to sell more products to your clients once you have that great relationship. Some recommendations for full line selling. So you're talking about the full line selling or suggestive selling. This is a pre-approach step. You make recommendations after the first, you have first satisfied the customer's primary need. You make your suggestions thoughtful and positive, and when appropriate, you demonstrate the suggested item, add-on item that you're trying to sell. So again, it's really you assessing the client's business to figure out, is this a good fit for them? Obviously, they relied on you in the first place to pick products or choose products from your company. Now's not the time to just stuff a bunch of, we call it stuffing, stuff a bunch of product to the client and have them buy a bunch of stuff that they don't need. That's really not going to be very helpful. So again, follow through. You set up a secure website or extranet so the client can track the production and delivery of the custom engineered research equipment. And you set up the secure website in a timely manner, and then contact the customer when it's operational, explain how to access the website, and review the benefits of using this source of assistance. So, I mean, there's just all kinds of things you can do when you look at follow through, follow up, expansion selling, suggest the purchase of GPS technology to enhance the use of seed research equipment. GPS technology, the salesperson says, the GPS technology will enable you to track all your research and plot the findings on your computer screen. So, I mean, just really add-on business is key, but you have to make sure they're satisfied with the primary product and the service to begin with. Others in the organization that will influence your partnership building is the receptionist. We do this a lot in hiring. We have people that are brilliant in the interview room but are terrible with our staff. They're not polite to the receptionist. They're not polite to other people in the company, but they're spot on when they're in the interview room. You can hear all kinds of stories about this, particularly for the folks in the human resource part have heard all kinds of stories, I'm sure, by now about people who did not get the job because they didn't treat the other staff well when they came in for an interview. There's other people, technical people, that have influence in partnership building. Like I said, I've had people that have left companies and went to a new company and they brought me in. Stock clerks and receiving clerks and management personnel, let's face it, you have to be generous and helpful to all people, not just the key people that you think are important to the decision, because some of these people can absolutely undermine your sales efforts. So, and it's just the right thing to do is the other piece. What do you do when you have unhappy customers? How do you address that? So first off, you got to give customers every chance to tell you. There's a lot of companies that don't have any mechanism or any feedback mechanism to let customers tell them about what, their unhappiness. Keep in mind that dissatisfied customer will often tell 8 to 10 people about their problem. It's a double loss when they stop buying the products. So not only are they telling people about it, they're not using your products. So when complaints surface, you got to look at this as an opportunity to turn it around and make it a positive experience. I mentioned earlier, it doesn't matter whether the problem is a real problem or is it a perceived problem by the client. If they think it's a problem, it's a problem. And you can't alibi. You can't say, well, whatever the reason is, that you got to fix it. So you absolutely have to jump in and fix it. Politely share with the customer your point of view, why you think that might be a cause of the problem, and then figure out how to fix it. Is really the key. It doesn't matter that we're sitting around talking about it. The client's most interested in getting the problem fixed and moving on. There's not a lot covered here in the slides for this, but I can tell you from personal experience that turning an unhappy customer around to a very happy customer, I could tell you story after story of people. Matter of fact, I have one in particular I like. And that's years ago, we monkeyed around, when I had the car stereo shop, we monkeyed around with these lights that went underneath cars. You've seen them, I'm sure. But they were called motion neon. I'll never forget this. So we bought these things and we'd install them on customer cars, and they were quasi-illegal because they weren't technically legal to use on the road, but you could use them sitting in a parking lot and they would light up the undercarriage of your car and it looked real cool. Well, people would use them while they're driving. And that would alert the police. And so we had a young guy get pulled over and ticketed for having these on his car. And the police told him that they were illegal and he wasn't allowed to have them on his car. So his father was a very influential person, came into my shop in a suit and demanded to see the owner. And I happened to be there and addressed him and said, yes, how can I help you? And he said, well, you sold my son an illegal product and he got a ticket. And I said, no problem. I'd be happy to take them off his car and refund his money. And he stopped dead in his tracks. I mean, stopped short and just was like, he really expected, I think, a confrontation where he would have trouble getting a refund or whatever, or addressing the problem. And I said simply, it's no problem. I said, we don't want any trouble for anybody. If there's an issue, happily refund your money, including the installation, not a problem. And at that moment, he said, well, great, I appreciate that. And he said, and I'll tell you what, I'd be happy to take that as a credit, and I'll buy my son something else. We'll buy him a stereo or something else in the store. And so I didn't even have to give him a cash refund. That customer went on. He went on to buy thousands upon thousands of dollars, his family did, over the years from our shop. A perfect example of dealing with an unhappy customer and turning the situation around. So it is critical that you listen and act and be accommodating, because you can build long-term relationships with customer service, and you listen to those complaints and deal effectively with those, and you can be very successful in your sales career. That's the end of chapter 15.